Hello, people. Welcome to the tutorial on CSS Grids and responsiveness. My name is Zidar, and I'll be taking you through these two concepts, right? So it's going to be sort of more of a practical example, I suppose, and more of like a walkthrough because CSS Grids and responsiveness is quite a big area and is like quite a few ways to do it, right? But what I'll be doing is I'll just be taking you through some of the, actually, let's just see what's on the agenda. So I'll be going through like the reason for responsiveness. First of all, I'll take you through a short intro to CSS Grids or just a little bit of a background or more information on it. And then I'll dive straight into a practical example using both of CSS Grids and responsiveness, right? So yeah, that will basically be how today will go. So to get started, uh, yeah, just like a little bit of background on why we choose responsive design. So responsive design is a development technique that detects the client type and dynamically adjusts the layout of a site according to the size of the screen on which it is displayed. Right. So that might not sound like very important, but in the past, with like development companies had to make a site for every single device actually. So you can imagine there'd be like lots of duplication there with the HTML, the CSS. You might have to like restructure every time. And yeah, so like some of like examples of sites that take that approach could be Facebook, for example, or any site where you see the URL starts with m dot, right? That would be like a site that is specific to mobile, and the company might like have a reason for doing that, or it might just be sort of legacy code also that wasn't like easy to port to like uh, modern technologies, right? So with the responsive design, you'll write the code once or sort of for one device, and then just sort of make some site adaptations, and then you'll basically have a site that works on all types of devices. So the example here is that you can display the same content in a 3-column format on desktop, 2-column format on tablet, and 1-column format on a smartphone, right? So that's basically it. So I'll just share my screen quickly. Yeah, and also obviously we want to yeah. So oh, mm, let me just. It's might have messed up. Just hold on a second. Sorry, guys. Okay. Right. So just to continue, like actually on the very first page there was an example of how that might look. So this is just like an icon type of image, but you can see here that there's multiple devices. It's a phone, it's a tablet, it's a small kind of tablet thing, a larger tablet or iPad type of device, and this would be a desktop, right? And you can see that this is the layout for mobile, similar stuff, but content could also be added as you go along. But the main thing is that the difference is that columns change size or layout, basically. Yeah, so it's just, yeah, look at the stats here. I actually thought it was more, but it turns out that like 63.4% of uh, people or internet users are apparently using mobile devices. So if you make your site sort of just, how can I say, uh, fit to like a desktop environment, then uh, that's the percentage of people who would basically see like a broken site or a site that doesn't look right, right? I'm sure you guys have maybe seen like an example of a desktop site on mobile, and that just doesn't look good because you see lots of overflows and scroll bars, etc., and it's just not a good user experience, right? So moving on. Uh, Actually, I'm just going to give like a brief introduction of how CSS grids work. So to work with CSS grids, you need sort of containers, right? This is sort of like the fundamentals of, I would say, positioning, because say for instance you want a two-column layout. Uh, Previously with like say for instance floats, you might need to float the one right and the other one left, or something like that. But this gets pretty tedious when you have to uh, use a really multi-column layout or multiple columns, and now you have to target every single one by one, or use some other hack that it just doesn't feel like intuitive, right? So with CSS grids, we work actually with rows and columns. And because you work with rows and columns, you can basically then place any content into any row or column as you want to define it, right? So uh, just going through the steps here, you have to target the main container, first of all. Okay. I think I messed up with the slide there. Target the main container first, right? And then use the display grid. So you guys might be familiar with the display property. You guys have used maybe display block or display inline. This just works. This is just like the definition that, okay, we are going to use the grid formula, right? Uh, and then the third step would be to define your columns. And the reason why I'm saying columns first, you might think rows first, then columns, whatever. But often the rows are automatically sized based on your content anyways when using CSS grids. So you might have to define the rows as well, or sort of the rows of the grid, but it's often that you won't actually need to do that, right? And then the other part is position and fill as needed. So after you define the grid, the content would automatically fall into place, but you can also move the content around or position it as well. And then basically once you've done defining the grid and obviously the actual HTML content, etc., yeah, then you should basically be done and marvel at your layout, right? Uh, Actually, wait, yeah, so demo, it's not going to be the capable calculator. Just messed up there, but yeah, we'll basically be diving right into the demo. And yeah, so the layout that I chose is actually this picture right here. So uh, I'll go right into my development environment. I'll just do something basic. So a folder, like I'll just call it project. Hi guys, can you guys hear me? Sorry for that. Seems there was a bit of a credentials problem. Oh, okay, we're back. Nice. Yes, sorry for the bit of an interruption there. I'll just share my screen again. There we go. So you guys would see that. Right. So can you guys see my screen? Just want to confirm. Okay, right, all good. Awesome. So what I've set up so far is just the basic HTML. Okay, just the basic HTML. And just like a side note on these meta tags, like they might not have seemed important before, but this one right here is very important actually. Like you don't have to type it. VS Code gave it to me, my editor. But what this does is it actually enables or sort of allows your site to sort of pick up the actual device size and sort of scale accordingly. So without this meta tag, you might make the website responsive, and then if you go to an actual mobile site, it just doesn't go through anyway. So I've just set up using like the default VS Code HTML5 templates, and then yeah, that's basically it. What I'll also do here is link my CSS. Right, so that's basically it. CSS grids and responsiveness. So I have a picture of the grid here. So that's the layout that I'm going for. I think I zoomed in a bit too much. Let's just zoom out. Hey, never mind. Right. So the approach that we'll be taking today is mobile first. You guys would also maybe come across like other methodologies, but with mobile first, you just start out with defining the elements and layout for the mobile side first, and then as you define like the layouts for the others, it just sort of propagates. So your styling will move from here into here, into here, into here, right? As you find a bigger site. So let's start off with defining our HTML. Oh, but showing. Enlarge my font size. Right. So in VS Code, I suppose. And I don't have like a mouse wheel right now, but okay. Right. Okay. Thanks, Jody. So what we'll do now is just define some of the HTML. And if you remember from the tutorial or the slide from before, we sort of have to define a main container first. So that's what we'll do. Main container. So any element div, I'll call it container, right? This is just a shorthand VS Code syntax, div class container. So yeah, that's going to be my outer container, and that's normally where you actually target, and you say display grid on this container, right? The next part, as you can see in the tutorial, is to display grid and define your columns. Okay, but we also need a content list definitely. So I'll start out with a nav. This whole section on top looks like it might be to do with nav. So that's a nav tag. It's just a glorified div basically. And what I'll do is maybe use like a div for like a red logo or something. I mean, you could name this class is better, obviously. Like your content would be your content, and the other part is going to be like blue-looking links. So this part is often links if it's a nav bar or some other type of thing. But yeah, just empty divs for now. The other thing that we might have to do here is oh, okay. Are you guys not seeing my screen? Okay, you guys are saying everything is good. Okay, I thought I wasn't showing my code maybe, but yeah. So yeah, that's basically going to be the top part. It's just literally containers for now. the rest of the other type of element that we want here is a card type of element, and we'll see that it has like, so I'll just make a div for a card, class for card. I mean, these are literally names I'm just giving it like as we went along. Inside the card, we maybe have like an image. So I'll call this gray image. Probably not a good practice to name it this way, but anyways, that's the gray image. The next one is going to be like a yellow header, because that looks like the heading of the card. So div, so I'll call it yellow header, right? That's that one. And we have 3 paragraphs apparently. So div para times 3. Okay, you won't see any of this because actually if I open this like currently in the display, just to see there we go, you'll see nothing because obviously the divs doesn't contain any content, it doesn't have widths and heights, it doesn't have colors. So let's start out with the colors, right? Yeah, so yeah, but actually don't forget that part where you have to target the main container and say display grid. Actually, you might not need to do that depending on where the grid is. So we're just doing the mobile site. So you want the mobile site to look like this, right? So let's start with the red logo. So red logo was the red logo. And what we're going to do is give it a background color of red. I mean, it looks like it's a sort of pinkish color, but anyways, that's going to be red. It's red logo. Have to be careful that your classes match up, and then blue links is the other one. So blue links. Right, so background color here is going to be blue. Okay, aqua. Aqua looks close. Okay, it's a bit too light. Anyways, colors doesn't matter here. And then with the logo, we just sort of want to also see it physically. So for each of these elements, actually we might want to give nav like on its own already, the container and nav. So container and nav. This is just normal CSS stuff. It's not like it's like anything new really. So what I'm going to do here is give it a width. Okay, we don't need to give it a width. We need to give it a height at least. So the height is going to be here, something like 100 pixels. And I'm just sort of guessing based on proportion, but obviously you can play around with that. And then with red logo, I need to give it a width of 100%. Just so that you can actually see it now. So, oh, actually it won't take up the, so actually you still won't see it because logo also, red logo also needs to have a height of 100%. So with 100% height, 100%, and I'll just pop that into blue links as well. And if I show this now, you'll see red and blue. Right, so we're getting somewhere where at least have the containers. Right, that's the first part. And on the mobile, we actually don't want to see blue links at all, like as you can see on that one. So blue links goes display none. Like we just don't want to see it. We just want to see the blue there. Oh, and also we probably want to target container. So container and give it like a bit of a margin around it, because you can see there's space around all of these. So the easiest way is to target the parent container and just give it a margin of something like 30 pixels. And if you define one parameter, it's right around, right? So that's the margin. Okay, we're getting there. It's just showing the red part. Red. It actually should show the blue part. Just it's as simple as making the red logo display none, and the blue links stays. Right. So the next part is to target the cards. Right. So for a specific card, okay, we have just one card there, but in terms of the HTML, we can see that the cards goes from one row, and these are all probably under each other, and that's that's why mobile sites are easy to make. Everything is mostly under each other. There's not much scrolling space anyways, and we don't want it to really scroll to the side. So we probably want a container also for the cards. So what I'll call it is card container. And that just gets wrapped around any instances of cards, because we don't want to have to define like cards every time, right? So that's one card. I'll just duplicate this. I'll copy and paste it like 4 times. So one, that's the second one, third one, and fourth one. And don't forget to always format your code, right? So, right. So just that the layout is good. Control Shift I is this. How can I say shortcut on my side? Right. So we want to target card container. Do we? No, we don't really want to yet. We can target each individual card. So gray image. Gray image. Did I say image or image? Yeah, right. So what I'll do is I'll give that a height, just because we actually want to see it once again. So that can be like 400 pixels, and background color of gray, yeah, and width 100% also. So width 100%. Okay, so now we know we will see gray image. The other thing was yellow header. So yellow head, I think I did say head or header. Yellow header. Wow, okay. Then in that case, we want a width height and a background color also, just to see it actually. Obviously, this could be like any different content. I'm just making it boxes for now, right? You guys can use any other types of content. I think this could be something like 150 and yellow. Right. So the other thing is to target the paragraph. So for para, same draw, can make them gray even. This can be like 100 pixels. So if I go to the site right now, it's just like a lot of stuff under each other. Oh, where's the yellow header? Don't think I'm seeing the yellow header. So I might have selected it wrong. Yellow, yellow. Huh. Right, that happens. Typo. Okay, so now it's just stuff under each other. It's not very distinct, and if you went to like a small device size, that's like how you usually want to test these, like the mobile site. You can also like inspect element and like show it like on actual web mobile site. But yeah, we're just getting there. We just need some spaces under it, and after we have the spaces, then you actually see that this is 3 paragraphs, right? I mean, it's looking a bit dodgy right now. So that's that. Height 100%, 100 pixels. And so to do that, I'm going to use a bit of a shortcut. So I'm going to say card, and then all the children of card. So somewhere around here, card, and all the descendants. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a margin bottom of 10 pixels, 20 pixels. And now you'll basically be able to see if everything in card also sort of be distinctive. So yeah, this is just the mobile site. I think I might be spending too much time on this. Okay, one last thing, maybe just also a space under here. We basically have, okay, the proportions is a bit out. I think this should be smaller, everything should be slightly smaller, but yeah, you guys would get the point. So also on the nav container, want to give it a margin bottom. I'd say that's 30 pixels. I'm just guessing the proportions, but yeah, there we go. So right, we got our mobile site sort of fine. You can see everything is good. What we want to do now is we want to move on to the other sites. I mean, the other views. So the nice thing about this is that it's really easy because we're using a mobile first approach. We got the mobile site right. What we want to do now is start doing responsiveness. So this is where things might get a little bit new to you guys. Like everything I did now was literally probably, how can I say, revision. But this is something that might be new to you guys. So media screen, and this is just like the syntax. So min width, we say min when we go mobile first. Otherwise, you would have said max if you to define that set first, right? But mobile first has less code because all of the code sort of just jumps into the next view, and we just make slight tweaks. So min dash width, and I'll say something like 700 pixels. I'm just assuming that this starts from 600 pixels. So you want to see the mobile site, and once it gets bigger than 600 pixels, this code inside here would execute. That's basically all that's saying. It's not like a really scary thing or anything. You just define that and tweak this part here. And if you're going mobile, and this part here, if you're going like desktop first, right? So now we want to go multi-column, and this is where we'll actually use grid more in depth, I suppose. So looking at the nav now, we have two elements. So we want to target nav. I'll be stealing this boy right here, but not the actual code, because the code actually just gets or propagates. So that's the nav container. I'm just targeting this entire thing year round or year round. And this is when we say display grid. And we say grid basically on the parents of the containers where we want to actually do a multi-column type of thing. So this is display grid. That's the one thing. So now it's going to be grid. The other thing here is to also say define your columns. So this is two columns. So grid template columns. That's just the syntax for defining the number of columns. You can actually give physical measurements like in pixels or stuff, but the best way to do this is sort of in FR or fractional units. So I'm going to say 1 FR for that, and say something like 3 FR, since this looks 3 times the size of that. So that's going to be 3 FR. And a fractional unit is just basically working with proportions. So this is 1 to 3, or a ratio. Think of it as a ratio as well, right? So that's a fractional unit, that's a fractional unit. And if I go to this side here, you will see nothing. And that's because you need to make the screen bigger to actually see it. Okay, we have a problem also. We're not seeing our red. So this is just like another thing that you would also have to do here, and that is target that red logo. So red logo. And what we would do is we'd make a display block again. Because remember, we hid it before, we said display hidden or display none or something like that. And now if we go to the mobile site, we don't see it. If we make it bigger, there we go. So we are really getting somewhere. Did you see how easy that was? This is 3 times the size of that. 1, 3. And that's basically almost it for grids. You can use this basically to define as much grids as you want to, but obviously based on your containers as well, right? So that's it for that part. The next part also, it was nice of us to define a card container before, because we can take this card container and sort of do the same thing with the cards. Because if you just go to it now, scroll down, multiple cards, you can't really see where's the start or end really. It's just looking like sort of a bit weird. But once you sort of target this card container, and what you would do here is exactly the same like you did there before. You start out with saying that this is going to be a display grid, but also define the number of columns. And you can see in this is sort of the intermediate. Guys, always comment at your code, right? So, or add comments at least for the sections. So for this part, you say, this is the small tablet. Oh, I don't know what else to call that device. That looks like a small tablet to me. Right. And it starts at 700 pixels. And obviously, the actual grid thing changes. We say 1 FR, 1 FR. You can also say auto. It just means it balances. It's kind of like when you center something using margin 0 auto, you are saying that auto on both sides. So auto works or fractional units. But I'll just stick with fractional units for now. And if I show the website right now, you see nothing. Is that right? Actually, no, that's not supposed to happen. Haha. Okay, so card container is display grid, and that's the cards. Did I miss something? Maybe a closing tag. Closing tag is there. template columns. Card container, did I do something with card container before? I did not. Card underscore container. This looks like, yeah, bit of a hiccup. Let's see there, I did not expect that. Display grid, template columns, 1FR, 1FR. And obviously we do auto, it's the same thing, so that shouldn't work either. Let's refresh. Oh man, got a slide here. That normally works. Okay, so what for debugging, what you would do is you would inspect element, right? So just select anyway, inspect, and if you just sort of target card container, you'd see there now that grid template columns is being applied. And it's auto, but I mean 1FR, 1FR. Oh, it was a class also, just to be certain. Only been using classes. Save it maybe. Refresh. Like this. Oh, the grid is there. Nice. So the grid is there, but we're just not using it effectively. That's most likely what is the problem. So when you inspect element, you can normally see the grid also. So that dotted lines right there is the grid. And if I press on here, the code is defining the grid, right? But the content just didn't fit or fall into it. And the reason could possibly be because I defined 100%, or I made everything 100%. And if I make everything 100%, it's not always 100% of the container. It might just be 100% of everything, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a small bit of a hack here. I'm going to say 90 and 90 and 90. I'm going to look a bit. It's not going to be in full proportion, but 90, 90, 90. Okay, the links, at links was a separate thing. If I refresh now, okay, but all our images are still 100%. So 900%, wow. Yeah, see, typos can do that sometimes. Did I say 900% before? No, 90. Just 90. And if I refresh, yeah, you basically see the responsiveness. So I think it just doesn't work always 100% when you try to make everything 100%, right? So sometimes, like in this case, it worked, but it's almost like when you made this 100%, it overflowed into the next grid. So if it overflows into the next grid, it will just take up that grid space. But now we actually have our grid. It's on mobile. That's what it's showing. So note that we could also have just made it 100% inside, or 90 inside the media query. That would have worked also, and then it stays 100% here, because this is basically defining changes. So yeah, so we have our grid right there, and that's basically almost all for now. Wait, one last thing. Want to just quickly do the other two. So for the other two, it should be pretty simple. We steal our media query, but note that the order that you define it is also important, because you have to sort of go from smallest to biggest. So if you put the bigger one, like say for instance, this is going to start at 1,200 pixels, which is like maybe half the screen or bigger than half the screen, whatever that is. So once that happens, and if you define this code before, remember, because like with CSS, it also kind of runs kind of sequentially, or evaluates it kind of sequentially. So if you put this one before, you'd see a bit of a bug, right? So just watch out for that. Yeah, and as to the rest, similar selectors. We don't even have to do much different, except that we can see that for this one, it looks like this one isn't just this part here, the blue links isn't just 3 times bigger. It looks like at least 5 times bigger. So if I had to make this 5 times bigger, what I would do here is I would say 1FR and left 5FR, right? With the red logo. The display doesn't have to be made block again, because it would have already propagated from there, right? You don't have to redefine stuff. That's why mobile first is good. And also, it's a 3-column layout here, so add another 1FR. And if I look at this now, on mobile, still the same old. Get it bigger, it gets there. Get it even bigger, goes to 3. Oh, one other thing, a nice feature that you can also use is grid gap. So when you define like a grid, you can also define like how big a gap you want between it. So I'm going to say grid gap 30 pixels for now. And yeah, that would basically put a gap there. It's as simple as that. And I just targeted still the parent container, and I said grid gap. And the same could happen here also if you wanted to change the size of these spaces, right? But the reason these spaces are so is because I made it 90 pixels. So that's like another way of doing that. But in this case, if these were all like close together, then you can also define a grid gap, and that would just basically be the gutters, right? And yeah, the very last one is to just make the full desktop site. And that is once again cloning this, because I think the proportions changed slightly, but again, this time this one is close to this one, so that's going to be 1, and this can be something like 2, 1.5, 2. I'll just make it 2 for now, and the grid adds like another 1 into it. And if I refresh, that's basically, oh, does my device even get, oh, okay, so my problem here is okay, first of all, I didn't close the comment, but my problem here is that I defined 1200 twice, so that actually overwrites it. So this one is basically overwriting this one, so also be careful of that whenever you're copying and pasting code. Like always like double check. When I say copying and pasting is like a good practice, but just for like short-term duplication like this, I'd have to make this something like 1600, for example. So it's like an even bigger screen. And if I refresh on the larger screen, Bob's your uncle, basically. So any questions here? I think we got, okay, we just got 4, but say for instance we had more card containers. Just one other thing. I'm going to duplicate this a lot. So and Control-Shift-I, Control-Alt-I, what? Okay, and all else fails, format document. Right, so if I just look at, I put a lot of containers in here, but the grid was already defined, so if I scroll down, those will just basically be like on the next part. So this would have been like actual paragraphs, this would have been actual images, and we have our grids, and it's responsive as well. So if I go to back to mobile, it's still that long 1-column layout. Right, so any questions? Questions? Yeah, if there's no more questions like right now, okay, I see Kalinda's typing. Questions in the question section of the chat. Well, we have a question section. Wow, okay. Storm. Okay, what's the benefits of using grids over modern fluid design style patterns like Flexbox? So that if you're comparing, how can I say, Flexbox to CSS Grids, I would say Flexbox is more like defining it sort of in one dimension. So if you just had to do this part, oh, is that my battery being low? Just had to define this part. Flexbox would be a good fit because sort of one dimension. But when it comes to CSS Grids, it's sort of better for more overall defining of positioning. So we can use the grid to not only do this type of thing, we could have used one grid for the entire thing, because the grids normally works like on a 12-column layout. And also for me, it's more intuitive. So it's kind of like easy to understand if you're just working in grids and just putting your elements all around. This is a grid, this is a grid element, grid element, grid element. And also you can think of it in terms of rows and columns as well. So yeah, that would, I suppose, be the benefits. Some people also use it sort of in conjunction with each other. So the other question here is, what's the difference between using a front-end framework and using grids? Oh, right. So the benefit there would obviously be no overhead of the front-end framework. So I suppose you mean something like Bootstrap or something similar. Then, oh, okay. My battery is, yeah. So a front-end framework like Bootstrap obviously would have all the disadvantages of Bootstrap, for example. So your HTML would be cluttered. You're not working only in your CSS. Obviously, like the load times obviously also gets affected by a front-end framework. But yeah, that's just about it. If you look behind the scenes, it's pretty likely that they also use Flexbox or Flexbox or CSS Grids as well, or they could use both. But that's just sort of like a different level of abstraction as well. So you basically just use their code. And with grids, you might also think of it as having more control also on a lower level. Right. So any other questions? Or do you use some type of grid layout when you use in using the app? So it's possible to use the same CSS grids with React. That's pretty. It would be pretty awesome. But if you're talking about using like React Bootstrap or something like that, then it won't be the same because you obviously have to adapt to their API or use their method of implementing it. If you make the width 100%, can you use overflow hidden? Would that work? Uh, it's not. Oh, so you're referring to that problem where I had the one element that was long when all of these boxes was defined as 100%. Overflow hidden wouldn't actually solve that problem because overflow hidden is more of when stuff like actually overflows the screen or the container actually also. Ah, so that's actually a pretty good, how can I say, uh, advice when it comes to, or it's a good thing to implement also when I made that 100%. So let's go back and try that as well. I think that's a good theory. So I'll share my screen. These were 100% and it was overflowing, and that was the problem. Oh, I think the actual problem was not even that. This can actually be 100%. I think the actual problem was we had no grid gap. Yes, that was our problem. So if they're all 100% now, you should sort of see this grid would look a bit weird. Right, and it's not actually just one element. They're all just next to each other. So there is the grid. The grid was there. I don't know how I made that mistake, but if you just define a grid gap in the parent, uh, like here, in the card container, a grid gap, I'll make it something like 30 pixels. Just quickly, overflow isn't even required. Man, did I save? Did I? Grid gap. I was showing. I just used grid gap. Okay, when it says unknown, I'm just using it here also. This thing is trapping. Grid gap. Yeah, but they basically still are next to each other, but grid gap isn't working. You can also use other properties like, so I would advise you guys to do sort of more deeper research. You can use grid column gap, for example, and that would define a gap just between the columns. But this thing is still tripping, so grid dash gap, 30 pixels. I don't know what's the difference, but the error suddenly is gone. So who knows? Maybe I made an error with a bracket, and there we go. Perfect, 100%. And I didn't need to like use that hack where I made it 90% just to see the gaps between it. So obviously you can tweak the gap also, like yeah. And as to the previous deadline problem, like who knows? I just retyped it and it worked. Right. So any further questions? We have a question here. using a front-end framework. Okay, I answered that one. Right. So no more questions. I'll just be yeah. So you guys can do your own research on any website directly schools, just to like take it a bit further. But yeah, that's just about it for now. Cheers, guys. I'll chat to you next time.